Hello students, in the previous video lecture we have started with the discussion of random access memory, and in this video lecture we will be discussing about read-only memory and cache memory. Both static and dynamic RAM chips are volatile, which means that they retain information only while power is turned off. There are many applications requiring memory devices that retains the stored information when power is turned off. For example, if it is being needed to store a small program in such a memory to be used to start the bootstrapping process of loading the operating system from an hard disk into a main memory, the embedded applications are another important example. Many embedded applications do not use a hard disk and requires non-volatile memory to store their software. Different types of non-volatile memories have been developed, but a special writing process is needed to place the information into a non-volatile memory. Since it is normal operation involves only reading the stored data, a memory of this type is called read-only memory. A memory is called a read-only memory or ROM when information can be written into it only once at the time of manufacture. A logic 0 is stored in the cell if the transistor is connected to ground at point P. Otherwise, a 1 is stored. The bit line is connected through a resistor to the power supply. To read the status of the cell, the word line is activated to close the transistor switch. As a result, the voltage on the bit line drops to near zero if there is a connection between the transistor and ground. If there is no connection to ground, the bit line remains at the high voltage level, indicating a 1. A sense circuit at the end of the bit line generates the proper output value. The state of the connection to ground in each cell is determined when the chip is manufactured using a mask with a pattern that represents the information to be stored. Some ROM design allow the data to be loaded by the user, thus providing a programmable ROM, that is PROM. Programmability is achieved by inserting a fuse at point P in a ROM cell. Before it is programmed, the memory contains all zeros. The user can insert ones at the required location by burning out the fuses at these locations using a high current plugs. This process is irreversible. PROMs provide flexibility and conveniency not available in the ROMs. The cost of preparing the mask needed for storing a particular information pattern makes ROM cost effective only in a large volume. The alternative technology of PROM provides a more convenient and considerably less expensive approach because memory chips can be programmed directly by the user. It allows the stored data to be erased and new data to be written into it, such as erasable reprogrammable ROM is usually called as EPROM. Since EPROMs are capable of retaining stored information for a long time, they can be used in a place of ROMs or PROMs while software is being developed. An EPROM cell has a structure similar to ROM cell. However, the connection to ground at point P is made through a special transistor. The transistor is normally turned off, creating an open switch. It can be turned on by injecting charge into it that becomes trapped inside. By injecting the charges into it that becomes trapped in the transistor that forms the memory cells. This can be done by exposing the chip to ultraviolet light, which erases the entire content of the chip. To make this possible, EPROM chips are mounted in a package that have transparent windows. An EPROM must be physically removed from the circuit for reprogramming. Also, the stored information cannot be erased selectively. The entire content of the chip are erased when exposing to ultraviolet light. Another type of erasable PROM can be programmed, erased and reprogrammed electrically. Such a chip is called as electrically erasable PROM or EEPROM. One disadvantage of EEPROM is that different voltages are needed for erasing, writing and reading the stored data, which increases circuit complexity. However, this disadvantage is outweighed by many advantages of EEPROM. They have been replaced EEPROMs in practice. An approach similar to EEPROM technology has been given rise to flash memory devices. A flash cell is based on a single transistor controlled by trapped charge, much like an EEPROM cell. The key difference is that in a flash device, it is only possible to write an entire block of cell. Prior to writing, the previous content of the blocks are erased. Flash devices have greater density, which leads to higher capacity and a lower cost per bit. They require a single power supply voltage and consumes less power in their operation. The low power consumption of flash memory makes them attractive for use in portable battery powered equipments. Typical applications include handheld computers, cell phones, digital cameras, and MP3 music players. A flash memory is used in digital cameras to store picture data. In MP3 players, flash memory stores the data that represents sound. Single flash chip may not provide sufficient storage capacity for the applications mentioned above. Large memory modules consisting of a number of chips are used where needed. There are two popular choices for the implementation of such modules. One is of flash card and another is of flash drives. First, we will see about flash cards. One way of constructing a large module is to mount flash chips on a small card. Such flash cards have a standard interface that makes them usable in a variety of products. A card is simply plugged into a conveniently accessible slot. Flash cards with a USB interface are widely used and are commonly known as memory keys. They come in a variety of memory size. Larger cards may hold as much as 32 gigabytes. A minute of music can be stored in about 1 megabytes of memory using the MP3 encoding format. Hence, a 32 gigabyte flash card can store approximately 500 hours of music. Now let us discuss about the flash drives. Larger flash memory modules have been developed to replace hard disk drives and hence are called flash drives. They are designed to fully emulate hard disks to the point that they can be fitted into standard disk drive base. However, the storage capacity of flash drive is significantly lower. Currently, the capacity of flash drive is on the order of 64 to 128 gigabytes. In contrast, hard disks have capacity exceeding a terabyte. Also, disk drives have a very low cost per bit. The fact that flash drives are solid-state electronic devices with no moving part provides important advantages over disk drives. They have shorter access time, which results in a faster response. They are insensitive to vibration and they have low power consumption, which makes them attractive for portable battery-driven applications. A very fast memory can be implemented using static RAM chips, but these chips are not suitable for implementing large memories because their basic cells are large, consume more power than dynamic RAM cell and not cost effective. Although dynamic memory units with gigabytes capacity can be implemented at a reasonable cost, the affordable size is still small compared to the demand of large programs with voluminous data. A solution is provided by using secondary storage, mainly magnetic disk, to provide the required memory space. Disks are available at a reasonable cost and they are used extensively in computer systems. However, they are much slower than semiconductor memory units. So, a very large amount of cost-effective storage can be provided by magnetic disks, and a large and considerably faster yet affordable main memory can be built with dynamic RAM technology. This leaves the more expensive and much faster static RAM technology to be used in smaller units where speed is of essence, such as in cache memories. When we talk about the memory hierarchy, the faster access is to data held in the processor register. Processor cache holds copy of the instruction and data stored in a much larger memory that is provided externally. A primary cache is always located on the processor chip. This cache is small and its access time is comparable to that of the processor register. The primary cache is referred to as level 1 cache. A large and hence somewhat slower secondary cache is placed between the primary cache and the rest of the memory. It is referred to as level 2 cache. Some computers has a level 3 cache of even larger size in addition to the L1 and L2 cache. And L3 cache also implemented in SRAM technology may or may not be on the same chip with the processor and the L1 and L2 caches. The main memory is a large memory implemented using dynamic memory component typically assembled in memory modules such as DIMMs or SIMM or RIMM. The main memory is much large but significantly slower than cache memory. Disk devices provide a very large amount of inexpensive memory and they are widely used as secondary storage in computer systems. They are very slow compared to main memory. During program execution, the speed of memory access of utmost important. The key to manage the operation of the hierarchy memory system is to bring the instructions and data that are about to be used as close to the processor as possible. This main purpose of using cache memory. So this is the main purpose of using the cache memory. Now let us discuss about the cache memory. The cache is a small and very fast memory interposed between the processor and the main memory. Its purpose is to make the main memory appear to the processor to be much faster than it actually is. The effectiveness of this approach is based on a property of computer program called locality of reference. Analysis of program shows that most of their execution time is spent in routines in which many instructions are executed repeatedly. The actual detailed pattern of instruction sequence is not important. The point is that many instructions localized area of programs are executed repeatedly during some time period. This behavior manifests itself in two ways, temporary and spatial. In temporary case, recently executed instruction is likely to be executed again very soon. In the spatial case, means the instruction close to a recently executed instruction are also likely to be executed soon. The memory control circuitry is designed to take advantage of the property of locality of reference. Temporally, temporal locality suggests that whenever an information item, instruction or data is first needed, this item should be brought into the cache because it is likely to be needed again soon. Spatial locality suggests that instead of fetching just one of it, the item from main memory to the cache, it is useful to fetch several items that are located at adjacent address as well. The term cache block or cache line refers to a set of contiguous address locations of same size. When the processor issues a read request, the content of a block of memory word containing the location specified are transferred into the cache. Subsequently, when the program refers any of the location in this block, the desired contents are read directly from the cache. Usually, the cache memory can store a reasonable number of blocks at any given time, but this number is small compared to the total number of blocks in the main memory. The correspondence between the main memory block and those in the cache is specified by a mapping function. When the cache is full and a memory word that is not in the cache is referred, the cache control hardware must decide which block should be removed to create space for the new block that contains the reference word. The collection of rules for making this decision constitute the cache replacement algorithm. Let us talk about cache hit. The processor does not need to know explicitly about the existence of the cache. It simply issues read-write requests using address that refers to location in the memory. The cache control circuitry determines whether the requested word currently exists in the cache. If it does, the read-write operation is performed on the appropriate cache location. In this case, a read or write hit is said to have occurred. The main memory is not involved when there is a cache hit in a read or write operation. For a write operation, the system can proceed in one of two ways. The first technique called write-through protocol, both the cache location and the main memory locations are updated. The second technique is to update only the cache location and to mark the block containing it with an associated flag bit, often called the dirty or modified bit. The main memory location of the word is updated later when the block containing this marked word is removed from the cache to make room for a new block. This technique is known as write back or copy back protocol. The write through protocol is similar that the write back protocol, but it results in unnecessary write operation in the main memory when a given cache word is updated several times during its cache residency. The write back protocol also involves unnecessary write operations because all words of the blocks are eventually written back even if only a single word has been changed while the block was in the cache. The write back protocol is used most often to take advantage of high speed with which data blocks can be transferred to memory chip. Now let us talk about cache misses. A read operation for a word that is not in the cache constitutes a read miss. It causes the block of words containing the requested word to be copied from the main memory into the cache. After the entire block is loaded into the cache, the particular word requested is forwarded to the processor. Alternatively, this word may be sent to the processor as soon as it is read from the main memory. The latter approach, which is called load through or early restart, reduces the process waiting time somewhat at the expense of more complex circuitry. When a write miss occurs in a computer that uses the write-through protocol, the information is written directly into the main memory. For the write-back protocol, the block containing the addressed word is first brought into the cache, and then the desired word in the cache is overwritten with the new. In a pipelined processor, it can cause instruction execution to stall from one or more cycles. This can occur if a load or store instruction request access to data in the memory at the same time that a subsequent instruction is being fetched. When this happens, instruction fetch is delayed until the data access operation is completed. To avoid stalling in the pipeline, many processors use separate cache for instruction and data, making it possible for the two operations to process parallel. There are several possible methods for determining where memory blocks are placed in the cache. Consider an example. Cache consists of 128 blocks of 16 words each for a total of 2k words and assume that the main memory is addressable by a 16-bit address. The main memory has 64 kilo words which will view as 4 kilo blocks of 16 words each. For simplicity, assume that consequent addresses refers to consequent word. The mapping function is shown here. With direct mapping, the replacement algorithm is trivial. Placement of a block in the cache is determined by its memory address. The memory address can be divided into three fields as shown in the figure. The lower order 4 bit selects one of 16 words in a block. When a new block enters the cache, the 7-bit cache block field determines the cache position in which this block must be stored. The higher order 5 bits of memory address of the block are stored in 5 tag bits associated with its location in the cache. The tag bit identify which of the 32 main memory blocks mapped into this cache position is currently residing in the cache. As execution proceeds, the 7-bit cache block field of each address generated by the processor points to a particular block location in the cache. The higher order 5 bits of the address are compared with the tag bits associated with the cache location. If they match, then the desired word is in the block of cache. If there is no match, then the block containing the required word must first be read from the main memory and loaded into the cache. The direct mapping technique is easy to implement, but it is not very flexible. Let us see about associative mapping, in which a main memory block can be placed into many cache block positions. So in the diagram, 12 tag bits are required to identify a memory block when it has resided in the cache. The tag bit of an address received from the processor are compared to the tag bit of each block of the cache to see if the desired block is present. This is called associative mapping. It gives complete freedom in choosing the cache location in which to place the memory block, resulting in a memory efficient use of the space in the cache. When a new block is brought into the cache, it replaces, that is, ejects an existing block only if the cache is full. In this case, we need an algorithm to select the block to be replaced. The complexity of an associative cache is higher than that of a direct mapped cache because of the need to search all 128 tag patterns to determine whether a given block is in the cache. To avoid a long delay, the tags must be searched in parallel. A search of such kind is called an associative search. Set associative mapping is another approach to use a combination of the direct and associative mapping technique. The block of cache are grouped into sets, and the mapping allows a block of the main memory to reside in any block of the specific set. Hence, the contention problem of the direct method is eased by having a few choice for block placement. At the same time, the hardware cost is reduced by decreasing the size of the associative search. Memory block 0, 64, 128 and so on till 4032 maps into cache set 0, and they can occupy either of the two block positions within that set. Having 64 sets means that 6-bit set field of the address determines which set of the cache might contain the desired block. The tag field of the address must then be associatively compared to the tag of the two blocks of the set to check if the desired block is present. This two-way associative search is simple to implement. The number of blocks per set is a parameter that can be selected to suit the requirement of a particular computer. For the main memory and cache size in the example shown here, 4 blocks per set can be accommodated by 5-bit set field, 8 blocks per set by a 4-bit set field, and so on. The extreme condition of 128 blocks per set requires no set bits and corresponds to the fully associative technique with 12 tag bits. The other extreme of 1 block per set is the direct mapping method. A cache that has k blocks per set is referred to as a k-way set associative cache. Next, let us discuss about stale data. When power is first turned on, the cache contains no valid data. A control bit, usually called the valid bit, must be provided for each cache block to indicate whether the data is in the block or valid. The valid bit of all cache blocks are set to 0 when power is initially applied to the system. Some valid bits may also be set to 0 when new program or data are loaded from the disk into the main memory. Data transferred from the disk to main memory using the DMA mechanism are usually loaded directly into the main memory bypassing the cache. If the memory block being updated are currently in the cache, the valid bits of the corresponding cache block are set to 0. As program execution proceeds, the valid bit of a given cache block is set to 1 when a memory block is loaded into that location. The processor fetches data from a cache block only if its valid bit is equal to 1. The use of the valid bit in this manner ensures that the processor will not fetch stale, that is old data from the cache. A similar precaution is needed in a system that uses the write back protocol. Under this protocol, new data written into the cache are not written to the memory at the same time. Hence, data in the memory do not always reflect the changes that may have been made in the cached copy. It is important to ensure that such stale data in the memory are not transferred to the disk. One solution is to flush the cache by forcing all dirty blocks to be written back to the memory before performing the transfer. The operating system can do this by issuing a command to the cache before initiating the DMA operation that transfers the data to the disk. Flushing the cache does not affect performance greatly because such disk transfers do not occur often. The need to ensure that two different entities, that is the processor and the DMA subsystem in this case, uses identical copies of the data is referred as the cache coherence problem. In a direct mapped cache, the position of each block is predetermined by its address. Hence, the replacement strategy is trivial. In associative and set associative caches, there exists some flexibility. When a new block is to be brought into the cache and all the positions that it may copy are full, the cache control must decide which of the old block to overwrite. In general, the objective is to keep blocks in the cache that are likely to be referenced in the near future, but it is not easy to determine which blocks are about to be referred. The property of locality of reference in program gives a clue to a reasonable strategy because program execution usually stay in localized areas of reasonable period of time. There is a high probability that the blocks that have been referenced recently will be referenced again soon. Therefore, when a block is to be overwritten, it is sensible to overwrite the one that has gone the longest time without being referenced. This block is called the least recently used block, that is LRU, and the technique is called LRU replacement algorithm. To use the LRU algorithm, the cache control must track reference to all blocks as computation proceeds. Suppose it is required to track the LRU block of 4 block sets in a set associative cache. A 2-bit counter can be used for cache block. When a hit occurs, the counter of the block that is referred as set to 0. Counter with values originally lower than the reference one are incremented by 1 and all other remains unchanged. The counter associated with new blocks loaded from the main memory is set to 0 and the values of all other counters are increased by 1. When a miss occurs and the set is full, the block with the counter value 3 is removed, the clock block, the new block is put in its place and its counter is set to 0. The other 3 blocks counters are incremented by 1. It can be easily verified that the counter value of the occupied block are always distinct. The LRU algorithm has been used extensively. Although it performs well for many access partners, it can lead to poor performance in some cases. For example, it produces disappointing result when accesses are made to sequential element of an array that is slightly too large to fit into the cache. Performance of LRQ algorithm can be improved by introducing a small amount of randomness in deciding which block to read. Let us discuss about the performance consideration. A key design objective of a computer system is to achieve the best possible performance at lowest possible cost. That is, price or performance ratio is a common measure of success. Next is the performance of a processor depends on how fast machine instruction can be brought into the processor for execution and how fast the instruction can be executed. The main purpose of this hierarchy is to create a memory that the processor sees as having a short access time and a large capacity. Cache improves performance is dependent on how frequently the requested instruction and data are found in the cache. Dividing the memory system into a number of memory modules, each module has its own address buffer register and data buffer register. Arranges addressing so that successive words in the address space are placed in different modules. When requests from memory access involve consecutive address, the access will be to different modules. Since parallel access to these modules is possible, the average rate of fetching word from main memory can be increased. Consecutive words are placed in a module and the higher order k bits of memory address determines the module. Lower order m bits of memory address determine the word within a module. When a block of word is transferred from main memory to cache, only one module is busy at a time. Consecutive addresses can be loaded in consecutive modules. While transferring a block of data, several memory modules can be kept busy at the same time. Recall that a successful access to data in a cache is called hit. The number of hits stated as a fraction of all attempt access is called hit rate, and the miss rate is the number of miss stated as a fraction of attempted access. Ideally, the entire memory hierarchy would appear to the processor as a single memory unit that has the access time of the cache on the processor chip and the size of the magnetic disk. How close we get to this ideal dependency larger on the hit rate at different level of hierarchy. High hit rate well over zero point 0.9 are essentially for high performance computers. Performance is adversely affected by the action that need to be taken when a miss occurs. The performance penalty is incurred because of the extra time needed to bring a block of data from a slower unit in the memory hierarchy to faster unit. During that period, the processor is still waiting for the instruction or data. The waiting time depends on the detail of the operation of the cache. We refer to the total access time seen by the processor when a miss occurs as miss penalty. Consider a system with only one level of cache. In this case, the miss penalty consists almost entirely of the time to access a block of data in the main memory. Let h be the hit rate, m be the miss penalty, and c the time to access the information in the cache. Thus, the average access time experienced by the processor is T average is equal to h into c plus 1 minus h into m, where h is nothing but of hit rate, c is nothing but of the time to access the information, and m is nothing but of the miss penalty. For example, let us take the access time to the cache and the main memory are tau and 10 tau respectively. When a cache miss occurs, a block of 8 words is transferred from the main memory to the cache. It takes 10 tau to transfer the first word of the block, and the remaining 7 words are transferred at the rate of 1 word every tau seconds. The miss penalty also includes a delay of tau for the initial access to the cache, which misses and another delay of tau to transfer the word to the processor after the block is loaded into the cache. Thus, the miss penalty in this computer is given by m is equal to tau plus 10 tau plus 7 tau plus tau, that is equal to 19 tau. Assume that 30% of the instruction in a typical program performs a read or write operation, which means that there are 130 memory access for every 100 instruction executed. Assume that the hit rate in the cache are 0.95 for instruction and 0.9 for data. Assume further that the miss penalty is the same for both read and write access. Then a rough estimate of the improvement in memory performance that results from using the cache can be obtained as follows: as time without cache divided by time with cache, that is equal to 130 into 10 tau divided by 100 into 0.95 tau plus 0.05 into 19 tau plus 30 into 0.9 tau plus 0.1 into 19 tau, which will be approximately equal to 4.7. This result shows that the cache makes the memory appears almost 5 times faster than its. The improvement factor increases as the speed of the cache increases relatively to the main memory. For example, if the access time of the main memory is 20 tau, the improvement factor becomes 7.3. High hit rate are essential for the cache to be effective in reducing memory access time. Hit rates depend on the size of the cache, its design, and the instruction and data access pattern of the program being executed. It is instructive to consider how effective the cache of this example is compared to the ideal case in which the hit rate is 100%. With ideal cache behavior, all memory reference takes 1 tau. Thus, an estimate of the increase in memory access time passed by misses in the each cache is given by the following expression, and it is equal to 2.1. In other words, a 100% hit rate in the cache would make the memory appear twice as fast as when realistic hit rate are used. How can the hit rate can be improved? One possibility is to make the cache larger, but this entirely increase the cost. Another possibility is to increase the cache block size while keeping the total cache size constant to take advantage of spatial locality. The high data rate achievable during block transfer is the main reason for this advantage, but large blocks are effective only upon to a certain size, beyond which the improvement in the hit rate is often offset by the fact that some items may not be referred before the block is ejected. Also, large blocks takes longer to transfer and hence increase the miss penalty. The miss penalty can be reduced if the load through approach is used when loading new blocks into the cache. Then, instead of waiting for an entire block to be transferred, the processor resumes execution as soon as the required word is loaded into the. Most processor chips includes at least one L1 cache. Often there are two separate L1 caches, one for instruction and other for data. In high performance processors, two levels of caches are normally used: separate L1 cache for instruction and data and a large L2 cache. These caches are often implemented on the processor chip. In this case, the L1 caches must be very fast as they determine the memory access time seen by the processor. The L2 cache can be slower, but it should be much larger than L1 cache to ensure a high hit rate. Its speed is less critical because it only affects the miss penalty of the L1 cache. A typical computer may have L1 caches with capacity of tens of kilobytes and a L2 cache of hundreds of kilobytes or possibly several megabytes. Including an L2 cache further reduces the impact of the main memory speed on the performance of a computer. Its effects can be assessed by observing that the average access time of L2 cache is the miss penalty of either of L1 caches. For simplicity, we will assume that the hit rate are the same for instruction and data. Thus, the average access time experienced by the processor in such a system is T average is equal to H1 into C1 plus 1 minus H1 into H2 C2 plus 1 minus H2 into M, where H1 is the hit rate in L1 cache, H2 is the hit rate in L2 cache, C1 is the time to access information in the L1 cache, and C2 is the miss penalty to transfer information from the L2 cache to an L1 cache. M is the miss penalty to transfer information from the main memory to L2 cache. Of all memory reference made by the processor, the number of misses in the L2 cache is given by 1 minus H1 into 1 minus H2. If both H1 and H2 are in 90% range, then the number of misses in the L2 cache will be less than 1% of all memory accesses. This makes the value of M, and in turn the speed of the main memory, is of less critical. Let us discuss about write buffer. First we will discuss about write through, then about write back. When it comes as write through, each write operation involves writing to the main memory. If the processor has to wait for the write operation to be complete, it slows down the processor. Processor does not depend on the result of the write operation, and the write buffer can include that for temporary storage of write request. Processor places each write request into the buffer and continues execution. If a subsequent read request reference data which is still in the write buffer, then this data is referred as in the write buffer. Getting into write back, the block is written back to the main memory when it is replaced. If the processor waits for this write to complete before reading the new block, it is slowed down. Fast write buffer can hold the block to be written, and the new blocks can be read first. Now we will discuss about prefetching. New data are brought into the processor when they are first needed. Processor has to wait before the data transfer is complete. Prefetch the data into the cache before they are actually needed or before a read miss occurs. Prefetching can be accomplished through software by including a special instruction in machine language of the processor. Inclusion of prefetch instruction increases the length of the program. Prefetching can also be accomplished using hardware. If it is being accomplished by hardware, the circuitry that attempts to discover pattern in the memory reference and then prefetches according to this pattern. Lockup free cache. Prefetching scheme does not work if it stops other access to the cache until the prefetch is completed. A cache of this type is said to be locked while it serves a miss. Cache structure which supports multiple outstanding misses is called lockup free cache. Since only one miss can be served at a time, a lookup free cache must include circuits that keep track of all the outstanding misses. Special registers may hold the necessary information about these misses.